Your health is personal, it's emotional, and sometimes it comes with more questions than answers. That's why one opinion is not always enough. Welcome to Second Opinion. I'm Dr. Ebony Jade Hilton, and every week we cut through the confusion, break down the headlines, and take a closer look at health issues impacting your life right now. From mental health and sexual wellness to infectious disease, oral health, and the stories shaping how we live, heal, and survive. On Second Opinion, we bring together leading medical experts from across every field to give you clarity, context, and the information you can actually need. Not the fear, not the noise, because knowledge is power. And when it comes to your health, you deserve answers you can trust. So buckle up, lean in, and stay with us. This is Second Opinion. Up first, we're remembering the old food pyramid back in the early 90s. You remember the triangle, the one plastered on the wall in health class? It had breads and grains at the bottom, suggesting that we need to consume those the most to maintain a healthy diet. Then fats and oils were showcased at the very top, meaning we need to limit our intake of those. We remember that, right? Well, this January, the Department of Agriculture released a totally new set of dietary guidelines. And the food pyramid looks, well, very different from the one you probably remember. It's high in protein, dairy, and healthy fats. And here to help us break down the changes is Cootie Mack, speaker and fitness philosopher. Cootie, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Dr. Hilton. I'm gonna get one of them in.
So tell us, what is this new food pyramid? What are the big changes that you've seen, and why does it look so different?
So the new food pyramid is, like you said, the Department of Agriculture's revamped recommendations for how people should eat. The old food pyramid, like you said, was a pyramid. You looked at it, it was small at the top, it was wide at the bottom. This food pyramid is inverted. So it's big at the top and it deltas down to a fine point. At the top now, what visually is represented are meats, cheeses, dairies, things of that nature, implying that we need to eat more protein and more healthy, full fats. At the very bottom is our grains, which are at the peak, which is now inverted at the bottom, suggesting that we need less grains, less starchy carbs, less breads, etc.
And why do you think these changes came about? Is there any, in this current climate, we're always thinking, a battle of health versus politics, and how does this follow the money, right?
Yes.
What is causing the change in the food pyramid at this time?
And you nailed it. So I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I do believe in the truth. I'm not anti-capitalist. I want to make money too, but I believe there's responsibility in capitalism. I am not oblivious, especially once I dove into wellness and nutrition and really stepped into this thing with the ethos of I want to help people be their best daily via natural interventions, whole food interventions. Nothing against science, nothing against medicine rather, but it is science. Like the body responds to certain foods certain ways, and the body's actually designed to help itself repair. Now, to answer your question, if you go back, so I'm in my 50s. So I remember when I was young and first came to the country, there was a big push on low fat. People were having heart attacks. They attributed it to fat. And so basically there was this whole movement. And when I was young, you would see all kinds of new foods being introduced via their fat content, 30% less fat, 30% less fat. But the things that make food taste good to human beings are sugar, salt, and fat. If you have those three things in any kind of combination, undoubtedly, that food is going to taste amazing to you, regardless of whatever your health endeavors are. So once you remove fat from something, to make it still taste like food and not taste like paper, you had to increase the salt and the sugar. Then what started happening was high blood pressure, hypertension started to become a bit of an epidemic as I started to get a little bit older. This is, and again, in my 50s. So as my students, when I lecture them, call it in the late 1900s, I almost flunked the kid off of that. Late 1900s. I was like, excuse me? Anyway, so in the late 1900s, there was this thing where it was a de-emphasis on sodium. So now you start seeing low sodium, reduce sodium, reduce sodium. But definitely if you take the salts out, you got to ramp up what? The fat and the sugar. So, but the sugar is the one thing that we as human beings just are addicted to easily, immediately. It's introduced to our systems, and once it is, we're hooked, whether we're diabetic or not. So what happens is now there's this influx of sugar, and then they try to say, okay, we're going to reduce the sugar, so we're going to give you these fake sugars, these alternative sugars, these sweeteners, Sweet and Low, Splenda, NutraSweet, all these things started coming up, but then those things were causing cancer. So what happens is sugar becomes prevalent. And as you flash forward into the 21st century, what you have is this abundance of people who, if they aren't already diabetic because they were born that way, type 1, they've eaten their way into diabetes because there's so much sugar just added into the foods to make it taste like something. So now people are type 2 diabetic, and to reduce those things pharmaceutically, they're introducing interventions that have this side effect where, we're starting to lose weight because we're inhibiting your sugar absorption, GLP-1s. When that happens though, what comes with that is these GLP-1s, while they help people who are diabetic, and there are natural interventions that we could talk about offline, but while they help people who are diabetic, now you see a proliferation of people who are using them simply to fight obesity. And, if it's your last resort, I totally understand it. I'm not shaming anybody for that, but just keeping it real within the context of our conversation, those GLP-1s inhibit the body's ability to really synthesize protein. So what happens is now you're starting to lose muscle mass. You're losing weight, but you're losing muscle mass. So so now when you start picking up foods that used to highlight how many grams of carbs they didn't have, or how much sodium they didn't have, or how much fat they didn't have. Now what do you see? 14 grams of protein.
Right.
You start to see protein labeled on everything. And I promise you, if you follow the money and you follow the lobbyists, and if you follow Big Pharma, you follow the GLP-1 situation, you'll see that that's why the push for protein is now thrust upon us. Everything from meat lovers to double patty burgers to, even with healthy foods, the food pyramid. So now they're emphasizing visually to you that you need to eat way more meat. But the thing is, what we do need is protein. Whether you're a vegan, vegetarian, or just a carnivore like everybody else that's left, you do need protein. You need lean, responsibly prepared source protein. But if you look at the pyramid, it's got meat and cheese and dairy at the top, and it doesn't really speak to the ramifications of the saturated fat that you might be ingesting if you just look at that pyramid. So if you read the fine print of the updated 21st century pyramid, it'll still emphasize eating vegetables and fruit and things in balance. So what I like to do with my BYBD philosophy is I like to emphasize the things that are on program, i.e. the things that will help you reach your goals. So whatever your health goal, your fitness goal, your maintenance goal is, we figure what that is out, and then we will prescribe the stuff that falls in that range in a healthy, natural way. Once you figure out what's in that range, I encourage people to do those things. And I don't really worry about what you're not supposed to do, because that's when it starts to get a little too heavy to lift in your brain. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Makes complete sense. And, the question in my head that was when you were speaking was, did the pendulum switch swing in the opposite direction from sugar to high protein consumption at this point? So for those viewers that are not on GLP-1s, right, and they don't have to compensate for what the side effects of that medications are, how much protein is too much for them? Is there any consequence of that? And then also, when you're telling them to take in protein, should they do protein shakes? Should they do meats? Should they, powders? What exactly should they be looking for? Because it is everywhere, right? But what is actually good for them? Great
question. Typically, the ratio is somewhere in the neighborhood of between 1 to 2 grams per, almost like 1 to 1.5 grams per pound of body weight is your recommended intake of protein. Now, the most responsible ways to get these proteins is, especially if you're not talking about somebody who has exceptional circumstances, like you just talked about GLP-1s or any kind of deficiencies. If you're really just trying to maintain and just be healthy, the most responsible way to get those things are through wholly sourced protein, things like fat, like fish. If you're going to eat meat, lean meat, fish, poultry, eggs, 2% fat, plain Greek yogurt. Now, as far as shakes and supplements, I'm not a huge supplement guy. If circumstances dictate that you must take them, fine. But I always say, let's see how far nature can take you first, and then see where we're deficient there. Because a lot of times we just jump into the supplement pool, and a lot of things come with those supplements. A lot of times, if it's a shake or a powder, it's got a whole bunch of other ingredients in there that work against what you're trying to do. So, and nature is great. Nature gives you all kinds of sources of protein. So anything that's a seed, flax seed, hemp seed, chia seeds, pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, anything that's a seed is a really great source of protein that's not plant-based. Quinoa, it looks like a grain, but it's actually a seed. So you can substitute rice for quinoa. And if weight loss is not your goal, quinoa is an amazing source of protein because it has the 9 essential amino acids that meat give you. And it's the only plant-based form of protein that gives you that complete profile. Edamame is great. Edamame basically are soybeans. Now, soy processed, I vehemently vote against, because soy processed is, it reacts in our body like an estrogen. It's a phytoestrogen. And so all the things, and women are a lot more attuned to this than men are, but we're both susceptible to the ramifications of an over inundation of estrogen in our system. So that's like soft chest tissue, getting hippie, water retention, those kind of things come with having too much estrogen in your system. So, and talking about packaged foods, like we were just talking about earlier, almost every packaged food, unless you look and it says otherwise, has some level of soy and sugar in it. So there's so much soy coming at us and sugar coming at us before we even are aware of it, that's why you see the uptick in people who are type 2 diabetic or who are pre-diabetic and being aggressively treated with pharmaceuticals. And if you're talking about people who are searching for sources of protein, I would say go whole foods first. So go with nuts, go with seeds, go with fish, go with, eggs if you tolerate them, if you don't have an aversion to dairy, 2% fat, Greek yogurt, very high in protein as well.
Yeah, it's one of those things, you try to be healthy, you're trying to drink soy milk, and then you hear that it's actually not the thing that you necessarily should run towards every single day. And one thing on a new pyramid, different as far as a drink, it also mentioned alcohol, that there is no safe amount of alcohol. Back in the day, you used to have an allowance for 1 drink a day for women and 2 for men. Why do you think that's changing with this new pyramid?
Well, number one thing I always try to tell people, moderation is such a fallacy when it comes down to being healthy. First and foremost, our culture doesn't enforce moderation. Number 2, it is hard to tell somebody who's addicted to something to stop doing the thing that they're addicted to. Not even talking about alcohol addiction at this point, but just sugar in general. When people are talking about how that you could have, 1 or 2 glasses of wine and it was good for your heart and all that kind of stuff, the chemical compounds in wine that are good for you are the exact same chemical compounds that are in grape juice. But if you drink grape juice, you might not get drunk or get behind the wheel, inebriated.
Right.
So there are safer alternatives for sure. Alcohol, from where I sit, everything I do when it comes down to my nutrition and fitness consultation always starts and ends with keeping your liver clean, whether I say it or not. Your liver is the processor of all of your hormones. Your hormones tell your body every single signal and every single command, from sweating to building muscle to losing fat. So what happens is, when you think about this, I'll give you a little quick question since you're the doctor, right? If you have somebody who abuses alcohol, what is typically the main malady that afflicts them?
Yeah, we end up getting that cirrhosis,
Exactly.
cirrhosis of the liver. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you have a 5-gallon bucket of paint, and you have just 1 shot glass of red paint. So you have white paint in a 5-gallon bucket, 1 shot of red paint. And just a little spill, you just mix it in and then paint the walls. What color are your walls?
All right, they're red.
Exactly. So just a little bit of alcohol is going to inhibit your liver function. All right, hate to be a party pooper.
Right. Well, if someone was thinking, then what is, if I wanted to get healthier, right? And I'm looking at this pyramid and I'm looking at the old pyramid, what diet, if they were just to ask you, what should I be doing right now? What would you recommend their diet look like?
The first thing I would tell them to do, don't look at the pyramid. All right, listen to me. Look at your plate. Forget triangles. Think about a circle. Think about your plate as a pie chart. And if half of that plate is vegetables, ideally raw vegetables, i.e. salad, But if it's cooked vegetables, that's cool. But if you can get like raw vegetables, if you don't have raw vegetables, maybe a combination of some vegetables, like a veggie platter, a veggie tray, sampling, and some fruit, make that half of your plate, 50%. The next 50%, make that cooked vegetables. That last 50%, that last 25%, I'm getting my math wrong. So 50% raw vegetables, fruit, 25% cooked vegetables. That last 25%, make that a responsibly sourced protein. You're cooking with grease. And then one thing that the pyramid does say that I absolutely co-sign on, you touched on when you talk about alcohol, drink more water, drink less sodas, drink less sugary drinks. Those sugary drinks, even when they say they're sugar-free, if it tastes sweet to you, trust your taste buds, not the packaging, because that means that there's some kind of sugar substitute in there, and our bodies don't know how to discern the difference between those. It may not raise your glycemic index if you're diabetic, but once your body starts processing it, it's all going to turn to glucose.
Trust your body. Thank you, Cootie. We are going to definitely keep you around because I have a lot of questions. And this next topic, I think that people will want to hear. Not only do these new food guidelines impact us, so does the new guideline on milk. We once believed it does a body good, right? But does it actually do a body good? We'll explain after this break.
I'm Brittany Noble, Midwest-born, HBCU educated with experience in newsrooms across the country. Well, I've teamed up with Roland Martin to bring to you The Breakdown. This isn't just news. It's our stories, our voice, our community. Join me for The Breakdown, Monday through Friday at midday, only on the Black Star Network.
Changes to the food pyramid, there also came a whole social media campaign regarding milk consumption. The Trump administration unleashed ads on social media encouraging people to drink whole fat milk. The ads showed President Trump drinking milk, the Health and Human Service Secretary, Robert F. Kennedy, and a few others. They want people drinking high fat whole milk, but there are critics. So, Cootie, what's your take on this whole fat milk consumption, and should we be doing that at this time?
So here's what I'll say about whole fat milk. The state that most people are in right now, especially when it comes down to heart health, it's not the best proposition. Again, we talked about it in a previous segment about some of the influencers and what it is that's actually influencing, these recommendations that come from the federal government. And, again, not a conspiracy theorist. I don't wear tinfoil hats or anything like that. But, simply put, when you look at what America's agriculture is and the promises to boost advantageous situations for our farmers and whatnot, telling people not to drink cow's milk when you got farms full of, cattle can be counterproductive. Now, as far as health goes, you definitely, saturated fat is not good for you. So in that regard, if you wanted to drink cow's milk or goat milk, whatever the case may be, I would say go with the 2% fat option as opposed to the full fat option as much as you can. It won't necessarily destroy you if you indulge in whole milk from time to time. But if you're somebody who's a frequent milk drinker and you employ it in a lot of things that you like, your smoothies, your cereal, your oatmeal, that kind of stuff, you'd want to kind of cut that back, just give your body a chance.
And what is the chance that you're giving? What's the difference, the key difference between that whole fat and the low fat milk?
Your body processing it and your arteries, the health of your arteries. Mm-hmm. So blood pressure becomes a factor at this point. Cholesterol issues become a factor at this point. And again, I'll just remind folks that, again, I'm in my 50s. There was a time where eating out and eating processed and packaged foods was an exception. I mean, I was just talking about this the other day to a friend. I was like, remember when we used to be excited about eating at McDonald's because you'd watch it on TV all week. You'd be like, man, it'd be great to get some French fries and a Big Mac. And you'd go through all these things. Well, I hate to call it a brand, but just you'd watch these fast food commercials, and that one time in like 2 weeks you get a chance to go, and it was everything. Whereas now, even for people who are trying their best to keep their kids healthy, man, these kids got all kinds of options. It's one of these spots on every door. And if it's not going to be one, it's going to be the other. If it's not going to be the other, it's going to be the third. And so we're getting hit with this stuff all the time. And that's why it seems like we're a lot less healthy now than we were back then, because we ate more whole foods back then than we do now.
You mentioned kids, and I definitely remember those kid eat free nights. And that's when we used to go to those restaurants. But, now the schools are being allowed to serve whole milk again. Should parents be concerned about that? And what advice would you give parents when their child says, hey, mom, for lunch, I had whole milk?
Yeah, I mean, parents should be concerned. Yes. I'm a big proponent in this era of localizing your efforts to change what's going on within your community. So banding with other parents, we have technology now, Facebook groups and things of that nature, where we can just say, okay, hey, as a coalition, we move that this should be the case. And I've seen PTAs where parents have been able to change the dynamic of what it is that is served in their schools or offered in their schools, or alternative snacks or vending machines that have, water and healthy options as opposed to just junk.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of other options, we know that African Americans, about 65 to 80% of us are actually lactose intolerant, right?
Right.
So you mentioned earlier about how soy products and even almond products and all these other types of milk may not be the necessarily best options always, especially in high consumption. But what milk alternative would you suggest for them if they have lactose intolerance?
So any non-dairy milk alternative is going to be lactose free. So you can start there. There are some highly processed dairy milk products now that are lactose free as well. I would say if we're talking about a milk alternative that's not dairy, and you had to ask me, gun to my head, what's the one option you would suggest, Cootie? I would suggest pea milk. Pea milk, because I've already mentioned why I'm not big into soy and processed soy. That's pretty nefarious. Pea milk has the least amount of allergen interactions. Pea milk is the best, there's a scientific word that escapes me right now, but when it comes to a suspension, so when they add the vitamin D and the calcium, the one that holds that nutrition the best and makes it most bioavailable to you is pea milk. Pea protein is probably the cleanest source when it comes down to a liquid form or even an alternate form. So when we talked about getting your protein and we talked about smoothies and shakes and powders, most of the time those things come in the form of soy protein. But if you can find something that's pea protein, that's a more responsibly prepared alternative protein to animal source protein. So I would say pea milk is the one you want to go with. So with these alternative milks, it all depends on what your objective is, because that's what's going to make it on program for you. So if your objective is to say, mind your sugar, you're diabetic, lose weight, you want to stick with unsweetened almond or flax milk, pea milk again. If your objective is to have the most amount of protein, pea milk is definitely your best bet, because it doesn't have soy and it's got about 4 times more protein than all the other milk alternatives. If you're not looking for any of those health advantages, but you don't want to do dairy, but you want your milk or your oatmeal or your coffee to have that creaminess that full fat milk would give you, that's where oat milk would come into play. But if you're trying to lose weight, oat milk, coconut milk are not your friends.
Oh, and coconut milk in the midst. Okay, it's called a straight. Now, in thinking about the food pyramid we just talked about in the last segment, and now milk, these campaigns seem literally almost a complete reverse of Michelle Obama's FIT campaign in schools. So what would you tell parents if they are now sending their child to school and the schools are following the guidelines of the Health and Human Services, right? What would you tell them? What are signs to look out for that if your kid is starting to come home and they're looking like this, it may be related to the diet and we need to go back to the drawing board?
I don't know if it's as quick as like a quarter of, 3 months they're drinking this and all of a sudden they're going to appear a certain way. However, if you notice that your kid's picking up weight, that would be a good time to analyze what it is they're eating, whether they're snacking on, what they're eating when they're not around you. And it is not going to be hard to figure out or find what it is that they're into. With me being a nutritionist and, all Mr. Holistic and all this kind of jazz, until my kid was out of my direct supervision in terms of what my kid was eating nothing but whole foods. Mm-hmm. Then my kid goes to, it might have been as early as preschool, and they would give them snacks. Then my kid would come home like, I like Nilla wafers, I like goldfish, these things just start coming back. And it's one of those things where, you try hard. You try hard to keep them from having too much screen time and keep them from having so many snacks that are off program. But at some point it's going to get to them. So what I would suggest to parents first and foremost is set the example yourself, make the healthy eating look good as a parent. So when I do it, my kid gets kind of jealous when I juice vegetables and eat these salads because I make them look good and they taste good. And if you need tips on that, just hit me up, DM me Dr. Hilton, and I'll give you recipes. But I make it look good. So my kid is actually into, so my kid's not feeling well. My kid will go, Dad, can we just have salad tonight? And that's just music to my ears. So set the tone first, give them every opportunity you can as a parent to win because you are the parent. So set them up. If you can prepare lunches for them, prepare lunches for them. If you can at least give them some healthy snacks, find out what they like though. Don't just force it on. Like even me, as a grown man, professional fitness person, if you were handing me asparagus and eggplant, I'd be like, yeah, I'm good. You know what I mean? So, right. But the things I know I like, and I make sure I overindulge in those. So give your kids healthy options that they enjoy.
You know what, Cootie Mac, you have given me so much to think about, not only for how I'm going to raise my little twins now and packing their lunches because I cannot cook. So when you say raw food, that's right up my alley. But I thank you for helping us unpack both of these topics today. And we look forward to having you back very soon.
I look forward to being back. And if you or anybody needs tips, just DM me across any socials at KUTIMACK. DM me Dr. Hilton, including you, Doc. And I'll give you recipes, whatever it is you're looking for.
Give us that handle one more time.
So it's KUTIMACK, my name, at Cootie Mac, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. You can find me.
You'll get a new follower. Thank you so much.
Right, thank you so much. Looking forward to doing it again.
Thank you. Why is it so hot in here? Now, that's $1 million question that millions of women are asking, including myself. We'll explain why. Stay with us.
They said the quiet part out loud. Black votes are a threat. So they erased them. After the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act in 2013, Republican legislatures moved fast. New voter ID laws, polling place shutdowns, purges of black voters from the rolls. Trump's Justice Department didn't stop it, they joined in. In 2018, his DOJ backed Ohio's voter purge system, a scheme that disproportionately erased black voters. Their goal, erase black votes and political power. Yeah, that happened. These are the kinds of stories that we cover every day on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Subscribe on YouTube and download the Black Star Network app. Support fact-based independent journalism that centers African Americans and the issues that matter to our community.
It's such a hot topic right now, pun intended. It's on the front of Oprah's magazine. It's the focal point of dozens of new studies. It's menopause. And from mood swings to hot flashes, headaches, fatigue, and more, women over the age of 40 are just feeling the heat. And joining us now to explain it all is Dr. Janelle Thomas-Burrs, a board-certified OBGYN. Welcome, Dr. Burrs.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah. Now, can you explain to us exactly What is menopause? Can we fast forward through this part of life? And how do women know if they're actually experiencing it? Like, what are the symptoms that they should be looking out for?
Sure, sure. Yes. So menopause, the hard definition is no period for a year, not 11 months and 15 days, but 1 year. And can it still come back sometimes? Yes, but very rarely. So it's no period for a year, which can be hard to determine in women who've had a hysterectomy before they were menopausal, or women on birth control that takes away their period. So sometimes it can be hard to determine that, but that is our definition. And the symptoms vary, and they can start as early during the perimenopause time when you're still having periods, but you start having symptoms. And a lot of times you ignore those symptoms because you're busy with kids or work or just life. But hot flashes and night sweats. Night sweats usually start earlier than hot flashes, so people may be having the night sweats. Brain fog, trouble sleeping, irritability, depression, anxiety. You're just not yourself. Low libido, vaginal dryness, joint pain, actually, too. So those are some of the symptoms that we kind of chalk up to, oh, I'm getting older, especially the joint pain and things like that. I'm getting older. I don't like my job, this and that. But a lot of the times it is because of the perimenopause and menopause, which is caused by the cessation of having estrogen in our body. But it's not just estrogen. Or estradiol, which is what we naturally produce. Estrogen is really a synthetic term. But the other hormone that's so important in women that's totally ignored, we're told we don't need it, but our cells have receptors for it from our head to our toe, just like the estradiol receptors. And that is testosterone. So testosterone is very important in women. No, we don't need nearly as much as men, but that little bit of testosterone we need helps with those mood changes, helps greatly with the libido, the night sweats. The estradiol hits the hot flashes during the day, but the testosterone hits the night sweats at night. It's a game changer, just replacing both of them.
So, and you mentioned, that there's the tendency for women to have IUDs and other types of birth control that may limit us being able to tell whether or not we're entering into menopause. Right. Do these agents, the IUDs, the birth controls, the birth shots, do they cause you to go into menopause earlier? Are you seeing younger patients in your office who are experiencing perimenopause and transition to menopause? And if so, why?
It is difficult to tell that. We are seeing women younger with perimenopausal symptoms, or if you're younger than 40 and your period stop, it's called primary ovarian insufficiency. But it's hard to say whether it's because of those things. As far as we know, the data does not show that those hormonal contraceptives cause early menopause. But what's confounding that is our environment. Our body, our organs are fighting all the toxins and pesticides and this processed food and all this, soy-based things and everything that's in the processed foods as well, and how they treat the animals, the steroids they give the animals, and we eat those animals. So it's hard to separate that. But what we know now is probably more that than the hormonal contraceptives, because when you compare the groups, women who did not have it versus women who had the hormones, there's really not much of a difference.
Got you. And what do you say to those women who are entering into the perimenopausal stage of things? And they say, hey, I am losing my mind. I cannot remember anything. I used to be sharp as a tack. Now I have to write everything down or it will not get done. Are there anything to natural supplements? Is there a diet? What can they do to help ease those types of symptoms, if anything at all?
Yes, that brain fog is very irritating. Even the simplest words you can't remember sometimes, or somebody's name that you see all the time, it just escapes you. But with everything, whether it's heart disease or whatever, starts with our lifestyle, making sure we get our sleep. And unfortunately, in the US, we don't stress the importance of sleep. That's when everything happens for good in our body. Our body's healing. Our brain is getting washed with the fluid that helps cleanse and decrease our risk of Alzheimer's dementia. So sleep is so important. Getting your water, getting your movement in, again, eating as cleanly as possible. Nobody's saying anything about perfection, but eating as cleanly as possible, and meditating and trying to handle the stresses of life, helping our body handle the stresses of life. So those things are very important. And back to lack of sleep, that can definitely increase the brain fog, obviously the mood swings because you're not sleeping. And people who think, oh, I do fine on 4 hours of sleep. You may think you are, but your body is screaming at you. You're just ignoring it. Your body's screaming at you. So getting those, the basic lifestyle makes a big difference, especially sugar, alcohol, caffeine can definitely exacerbate a lot of the symptoms of menopause.
You mentioned the brain fog and women saying, hey, I just can't remember. Studies are showing that menopause actually has an impact on the brain. Mm-hmm. What are you seeing in those perimenopausal and menopausal women, particularly as it relates to their brain?
Yes. Again, just like when I was talking about testosterone, having receptors from our head to our toe, estrogen and progesterone, all three our cells have receptors from our head to our toe. So receptors are what those hormones bind to on the cell to make everything work. So we know that, and there are a lot of studies out there that show the protective benefits of the hormones. So it's not just for symptoms. It's also to help decrease our risk of heart disease, osteoporosis, yes, breast cancer, Alzheimer's dementia. So those receptors in our brain are begging for it, and it does make a big difference with that.
So when should women then, it's one of these things where our mothers and our grandmothers didn't necessarily talk to us about the change, right? No. The big change. Mm-hmm. So when should women start to seek medical help? Is this, and when should they consider hormone replacement if it can have such tremendous benefit for their overall health?
Right. Our mothers and grandmothers, they didn't know what was going on. I mean, they knew their period stopped, but they really didn't know what was happening. And the medical community really pushed, women's studies to the side, even to today. So they didn't really know what was happening and how to fix it. But there was a segment of the population who understood it, but it was kind of outside the traditional medicine, especially American medicine. So, but hopefully you're seeing your primary, and I will say preferably to your GYN every year. And sadly to say, a lot of us aren't very attuned. It's not taught very well in medical school or residency for OBGYN or other specialties. So hopefully we'll find one that has a sensitivity, number one, to what's going on with you and will listen to you. But if you're seeing them every year, they're asking you questions and hopefully opening that door for you to say, I'm having this brain fog. I'm more irritable than usual. Maybe your periods have started to change. Maybe they haven't. But hopefully that person is sensitive to know, okay, well, it may be your hormones. We can check them. And in my office, we do check testosterone in women as well. And the thyroid gland is very important. So the imbalance of the thyroid can cause a lot of those symptoms as well. But listen to your body. And to know that, okay, something's not right and it's consistent. Let me see somebody, and hopefully that person is sensitive to what you're saying.
Right. It's one of these things. How can we as a society demystify the stigmas around it? And I think we're doing a great job, because I feel like more women are talking about this now than I ever heard about before. And maybe it's because I'm getting into that age range. But why do you feel like more women are talking about it now, as in comparison to our mothers and our grandmothers?
I think, women are getting, even though the women's movement was 60s, 70s, but women as a mass, are getting more powerful and confident in speaking out and not being ashamed, especially the younger generation. They're talking more about what's called PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, female things. And it's the other part of it is the OBGYN community is really predominantly women now, as opposed to men. So things have shifted with that. And thank, God for Oprah and I think Julia Roberts and people like that who are putting it out there. They're highly visible. So women are realizing it's not just me. If you keep things to yourself, you think it's just you experiencing it, that something's wrong with you. And then you're even too ashamed to bring it up to your doctor. But when other women are talking about it, you say, oh, thank goodness, it's not just me. I'm not crazy. There's something actually that can be done to help make my life better. And my partner in my office, she had a patient who lost her job really because of this. I mean, she just got so irritable, so angry. So she lost her job, and giving her the hormones just changed it. It just changed her life. And there's not a day that goes by, much less, a week that goes by, much less a day sometimes that somebody doesn't tell me this has really changed my life.
Well, you said thank you to Oprah and to Julia Roberts. I think our audience would say thank you to you, Dr. Thomas Burris, that representation matters, and that when a woman walks in and sees that there's a female doctor, and automatically you just know she gets it. So we thank you, and we look forward to having you back.
I look forward to being back. Thank you.
So coming up next, one man spent 4 days with women battling menopause, and he captured it all. It got raw, it got real, and you do not want to miss this.
At the end of the Selma to Montgomery March in 1965, Dr. King stood in front of the Alabama State House and told 25,000 Americans that the greatest threat to the greedy oligarchy is when poor blacks and poor whites and others mobilize together and form a voting bloc that can fundamentally shift the economic architecture of our nation. In America today, we have fewer voting right protections than we did when the Voting Rights Act was passed in 1965. And state legislatures have abused their power to try to pick their voters rather than let the voters pick their legislators. Meanwhile, every day people are suffering while the greedy get richer and richer. Dr. King was right, and many others were right. The billionaires who think they can buy our politicians are afraid of people coming together across dividing lines and building power together. In 2013 and 2014, we together in this state built out the Moral Monday movement. And in 2014, more than 80,000 people showed up in Raleigh for a mass people's assembly. We mobilized our power. We mobilized our vision. We did not continue to just resist what others were doing. We claimed the world that we wanted, the society that we wanted. And what we did energized. It was not partisan, it was principled. Here we are again now in 2026. And it's time to love forward together and mobilize. This is our Selma moment. And we need everybody, regardless of your race, your creed, your color, your religion, your sexuality, whoever you are. If you love voting rights for all, if you love abolishing poverty and bringing into reality living wage, if you love health care for all, if you love and grace and mercy and do not want to buy into the religious nationalism of hate and meanness and a lack of empathy, if you want to love forward together, welcoming immigrants rather than suffering ICE raids, if you love the environment and want to see it cared for rather than the polluters taking over, if you love fully supported public education, if you want to love, not hate, and to have peace and not war, to stand against unchecked militarization and the militarization of our cities, then it is time to come together and mobilize our power and our passion for justice. Then we now are in a moment where we must move from resistance to loving forward and mobilizing our power. So from February 11th through the 14th, North Carolinians are going to be walking and marching and caravanning from Wilson to Raleigh. And on Saturday, February 14th, Valentine's Day, we will hold a massive people's assembly for a moral agenda in Raleigh, North Carolina. saying it is time to love forward together. We are marching from a district that MAGA extremists, because of a call from President Trump, decided to gerrymander the 1st Congressional District, take it away from the people. And we are inviting all defenders of democracy and champions of the common good to meet us in Raleigh on February 14th to reclaim a moral agenda, an agenda for going forward, to pursue the society and the democracy that we want, not only for ourselves, but for our children's children. For somebody's been hurting our people, and it's gone on far too long, and we won't be quiet anymore. We will love forward together.
An award-winning filmmaker wanted to document what women experience when they reach menopause age. So he put 5 women in a house for 4 days in Costa Rica and filmed it all, right? So take a look at 4 Days. It's a groundbreaking new series that follows 5 incredible women as they navigate the emotional, physical, and psychological realities of menopause.
Is unfathomable experience for most women. It is truly a transition from having hormones and having things within your body that are important for your daily function in your daily life, and then immediately castrating them and taking them away. And having 3-4 years of this transition where you really don't know what's happening.
I visualize this experience by getting a lot of questions answered. I visualize the experience talking to people that are just experts in this and bringing some understanding to actually what I'm feeling, what I'm going through, and some clarity on feeling like my body has really betrayed me.
Menopause is hell. I unfortunately have had like a denial with it and like a bunch of stuff that I'm kind of like, wait, where did the person that I knew for 40 years go?
I am probably the only one in my friend group that is struggling with perimenopause right now. And they don't quite understand what's going on. And honestly, I didn't understand what was going on with me either for a long time. It took me a long road to get here today.
As our bodies change, we face real, concrete symptoms, ones that can deeply impact our lives, our sense of self, and everything around us. Menopause isn't just a phase. It's a powerful transition, and for many, it can feel overwhelming and isolating. That's why we're here. Over these days together in Costa Rica, so many questions will be answered, and so many stories will be shared. It's the kind of open, honest conversation that millions of women have been waiting for, and we're so glad it's finally happening.
Sometimes it creates tension and issues. Sometimes I am just not in the mood. and I can say not in the mood for what? Just not in the mood. And that I think sometimes is probably pretty frustrating for Laura to have to just sort of accommodate and go, okay, well, maybe later you'll feel better.
And I'm just excited that this message is going out to the public with the backing of such a large group of people and some beautiful people who have shared their stories and their hearts with us over the days. So I'm just excited about the opportunity and also grateful for it.
I hope it helps to know that that's not how it's perceived.
Right.
And she is so lucky to have a marriage who cares, and that you're able to share and talk. And it seems like this has been a long time coming.
Yeah. That's why I'm here.
That's why you're here.
That's why I'm here. And I'm here by myself.
And I was like, oh my God, that's me. That's me. And she said, I can help you. I haven't heard I can help you since 2002.
Our goal is to help people step back into the driver's seat of their own health. We'll explore hormones, nutrition, sleep, and everything else that plays a vital role in reclaiming your energy, your power, and your sense of self. This is more than just a series. It's a space for truth, connection, and real transformation.
Joining me now is Charles Maddox of Maddox Femme. Charles, this series dives deep into the truth behind what millions of women experience, from mood changes and hot flashes to identity shifts and resilience. So what was the personal or professional moment that made you feel menopause deserved this level of storytelling, and why now? What was it that broke through?
Thanks for having me too, by the way. But it was, the projects that I have been making focus on health conditions. It focuses on people who are living with conditions such as diabetes, cancer, so on and so forth. And this was one where a good friend of mine, she was living with some menopause issues. And I remember she was dealing with a lot of mental health issues with this. And I said to her, I said, you know what, one day I'm going to come back and I'm going to do a series with you. And I did a few other series and I came back to this one and I started to look into menopause. And I was actually blown away. I was blown away by the lack of real information, the lack of education, the lack of support for the millions of women that are living with menopause. And I said, you know what? I'm going to focus on this one. And it's been for a male focusing on menopause, this has been something that has really woke me up in the middle of the night and kept me fighting for these women. And it's been an amazing journey.
You know, it's one of those things too, and looking at the documentary,
yeah,
absolutely beautiful. And you chose Costa Rica in this immersive 4-day experience rather than a traditional studio. You know, how did that environment itself influence the women's physical and emotional transformations?
Yeah, when I first came up with this concept, it was actually for diabetes, and I was doing a lot of activations with diabetes, and I said I would love to be able to bring people who are living with a condition to a certain place where we could bring in the experts, right? We know that navigating this healthcare system is daunting. You know, having to go see this doctor, then having to wait maybe a week or 2 or 3 to see another doctor. And it's very confusing, too much noise. So if we brought the experts to one location where we could focus on everything from mental health to nutrition to dietary needs to understanding everything that goes with whatever condition that we're focusing on, then we could actually be able to not only educate, but inspire. You know, inspiration at times for these conditions is more important than anything, right? So you don't feel like you're alone. And I like to say I like to fish out of a barrel than fish out of a lake. So if we bring these people together who are dealing with these conditions and we're trying to reach women with menopause, what better way to reach them than someone sitting at the comfort of their own home saying, that's me, that's what I'm dealing with. And they can see, you know, Nicole or Michelle or whatever like that going through what they're going through, what their husbands or partners are going through, and really be able to digest this information and then be led somewhere where they can get more education. Now, I chose Costa Rica. Selfishly, I also have a home there, but it's beautiful. Everybody wants to get away. Everybody loves going to somewhere tropical and getting away. And then you also take them outside of their environment where they know that they're coming for something special. And it's almost like a treat to them. It's almost like a retreat, but it's filled with love, education, and awareness.
You know, it was beautifully done. And as you said, this series brings together both the top experts, but also those women who are living this experience. And how did you, in your mind, how did you shape this so that you had a balance between the medical authority with the women's personal truths without one overshadowing the other? How did you do that?
Yeah, well, number one, we teamed up with some of the best in the business: Dr. Diane Bittner, Dr. Judith Joseph, Dr. Cerrucci. The list goes on. Dr. Sanjita. We team up with the best, but those people also have passion. They have a heart. It's not just you're coming there to just strict learning. It's about really becoming a family with them and being able to help them along this journey. And then, of course, because we live together in almost a reality, I like to call it a docu-reality. So because we're living together in a home for a few days, it has that real element. We eat together, we laugh together. I bring in local dancers from Costa Rica to do certain things. This time we actually taught them how to do some Latin dance, and they do yoga, they do meditation. It's a real journey of life and love and education, and something that can really resonate with the audience. So it becomes this beautiful mix of full education, where you see these women who are educated women, who are accomplished women, but know little to nothing about menopause. And it's actually, it was shocking to me, to be honest with you. It was shocking.
Yeah, it's one of those things we just don't talk about it, right? I mean, every woman goes through the puberty and transition into the fertile years and then into menopause, but it's rarely spoken about what that transition actually looks like. Now, during filming, was there any moment that genuinely surprised you or challenged your own assumptions about what menopause was or how it impacted these women's health?
Well, what was interesting is we actually had Robert Higgs, who was featured on the show. His wife was supposed to be there, but she changed her mind at the last minute. But Rob decided to come. Their marriage is kind of in shambles. And his contribution, I think, was probably the most pivotal. Because I know we're going to be talking about andropause and Rob understanding what his wife is going through, or a man understanding what their partner is going through, is also very pivotal. And we saw the experts to come together to kind of really support him. Rob broke out many times in tears because of trying to understand and be able to hold this marriage together. He's also living with low T as far as andropause himself, and having to navigate that too as well. I think one of the most shocking things or interesting things throughout this whole process is really the lack of real support. There's over $23 billion spent in digital healthcare advertising. There's almost 1 billion women living with menopause. So the awareness should be here. And even me approaching companies and saying, hey, let's have you get behind this. It was like pulling teeth. And so I think that was one of the most shocking things overall, is just that we need to do more, and we can do more.
Yeah, you speak of lack of resources, right? Lack of education, lack of resources. And when we're watching films like yours, transformation stories can be extremely powerful, but it can also be risky if they don't feel realistic, right? If it feels like, hey, they had all these experts, they had therapists, they had nurses, they had this dietary and nutritionist that's on their team.
Yeah.
I don't have that. So how did you ensure the results shown in this film were both authentic and attainable for women who are watching at home?
That's a great question. The results were real time. I think the greatest thing that we pulled off here was education. The greatest thing that we pulled off here also was information. But in people asking me, hey, Charles, what's that takeaway? To be honest with you, I'm a little lost, because there isn't resources where I can really say, hey, go here or go there, or there's this system set up, or there are a bunch of clinics set up for menopause. And I'm sure there are some. But, we remember, we're in this situation with the lack of awareness for a reason. I can't change it overnight or by myself. But I think what this series can do is really open that dialogue where we have something in our hands, where the caregivers have something, the providers have something, and the people who are living with menopause have something that they can walk away with and say, why aren't we doing more? Because we mentioned lack of resource. There's no lack of resources. There's plenty of money, but they're going in totally different places. And we need to change that. And, one of the things is that women help rule the world. There should be so much more invested in women's health overall, not just menopause.
Because menopause is still just surrounded by silence, stigma, and even shame. So what conversations do you hope this series opens? Not just amongst the women who are battling menopause every day, but within the families, like you mentioned, the gentleman who came on the show, workplaces, even in healthcare systems. What conversation needs to be had now?
Well, definitely men need to be fully into this conversation. And I say that because it's a taboo, right? If you don't talk about it, if a woman is dealing with emotional issues and you don't understand it because you've never talked about it, then we can't understand what a woman is dealing with, whether it's our teenage daughter or our wife or a loved one. So men need to totally be brought into this. I remember I was looking on some groups on Facebook, and I would see people post, "Oh, well, if men are in this group, I don't want to be in here," or whatever. And I'm like, no, then we need to change that. We need to open up this conversation and earlier so that men can understand and be there through this journey and not have to be surprised because, a woman is going through hot flashes and the air condition needs to be raised in the middle of the night and she might have a mood swing because of something and that throws you off and you two are at odds and going to war because of those issues. So I think men need to really be brought into this. And I believe that this is a series that can truly open that discord.
It's it's therapy. It's couples therapy, right? And
in many ways.
Right. How can viewers watch this film? Where can they go to see this full series? Because I'm telling you guys, it was absolutely amazing. Watching even the 4 minutes of it was just like mind blowing for me.
We're looking at that option. I just launched my own platform, which is revoke.com. But we typically air on, the Amazons, the Tubies and all of those platforms. But, we're kind of looking at a couple of different options because, what we want to do is not just put it somewhere where it lives and people have to kind of find it. I want to place it on a platform that we can actually keep track, where we can even get emails and be able to follow back up or send other information to those who have watched it. So we're looking at other options. I hope to launch it in the next few weeks, and maybe we'll air it on Roland's platform.
I think that's a must. You said and Revoke, RAVOKE?
Yeah, revoke.com.
RAVOKE.com.
Yep.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Charles, so much. Congratulations on the film. And like I said, it was beautifully done.
My honor. Blessings.
All right. Thank you. So Bye-bye. It's not just women, as Charles stated, it's not just women who are experiencing menopause. Men aren't exempt. Up next, stick around, fellas. We're discussing the male menopause. Yes, there is such a thing.
Hey y'all, welcome to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network and hosted by myself, Rhea Baker, and my good sis, Jamira Burley. We are just two millennial women tackling everything at the intersection of politics, gender, and pop culture.
And we don't just settle for commentary. This is about solution-driven dialogue to get us to the world as it could be and not just as it is.
Watch us on the Black Star Network, so tune in to The Other Side of Change.
talking about how menopause impacts women, but what about men? Did you guys know that over the age of 40, men are experiencing something similar? It's called andropause. And here to help explain it is Dr. Leslie Dean. Welcome to the show, Dr. Dean.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, thank you. So what exactly is andropause? Many of our viewers have never heard this term before. What is it?
So andropause really refers to the gradual decline of testosterone in men as men get older. We sometimes affectionately call it menopause to make it sound quite similar to menopause, which women obviously experience, but it really relates to the gradual decline in testosterone over several years.
And what exactly are the symptoms for women? With menopause, we have the hot flashes, we have the brain fog, we have the weight gain. What are the symptoms for men, and is it similar?
So sometimes the symptoms can be quite similar. There are physical symptoms, and then there are psychological symptoms. The physical symptoms relate mostly to a decline in muscle mass, a decrease in strength, a decrease in energy, an increase in body fat. So that fat around the tummy area, around the abdominal area that some men get as they age is a part of the andropause or menopause declining testosterone. And then sometimes the breast area can swell. Men also get psychological symptoms that include depression, irritability, difficulty with concentrating, and also cognitive decline. So generally speaking, we don't just become grumpy old men for no reason. There is actually a reason, and it's that decline in testosterone.
It's one of those things too. Men, the stereotype is that men don't talk about their feelings, right? And when you mention depression and you mention a decrease overall in their mood, how are they to determine if this is going into andropause or whether or not this is just a symptom of who they are, right? Is there any lab tests that they can have done on them, or what is it that they need to ask their doctors about?
So it really is important to rule out other causes. The andropause is oftentimes a diagnosis of exclusion. So we really have to rule out diabetes. We really have to make sure that obesity is not a factor. Stress, other chronic diseases. And those are things that have to be ruled out. Once they are ruled out, then it's important to get a serum testosterone level to see what that level is. And this is different from men who are undergoing normal aging, where yes, there is a testosterone decline, but there aren't the symptoms associated with it, or at least not symptoms that are noticeably affecting that man's quality of life and well-being.
And if they get the diagnosis, is there a treatment for it? What happens if they don't get the treatment? Are there any long-term effects related to andropause?
Yes, so testosterone is an important hormone as it relates to cardiovascular health. It's an important hormone as it relates to muscle health, bone health, lipids in the blood, and these are all things that must be carefully monitored. Yes, there is treatment for it, and that treatment generally starts with more conservative measures that can naturally increase a man's testosterone. They are as simple as exercise, improving diet, and getting enough adequate restful sleep. That can result in a natural increase in the testosterone. And sometimes that's enough to help with the symptoms that a man is experiencing. If those things don't help, or if the testosterone is very low and the symptoms are quite severe, then it's important to consider testosterone replacement. And that comes in a variety of modalities.
And what are those modalities? Is it an injection? Do they have to do this like a birth control pill where they take one medication a day? How does that work for the men?
So generally speaking, it's a testosterone injection that men can receive every 1 to 2 weeks. They are longer preparations that are in the form of a pellet, which is an implant that slow releases over a period of time. And then there are others like gels and patches that allow for absorption of testosterone across the skin. Until recently, there were no good oral testosterone tablets, but there are some that have come online now that don't have the associated toxicities with former preparations.
And you mentioned the toxicities. What is there such thing as having too much testosterone? When is just enough, and when do we go over the line to say, hey, now we're in a dangerous range?
Right. So we have to monitor lab work closely, and that would include liver function and the complete blood count. The complete blood count is important because testosterone drives erythropoiesis, or the generation of red blood cells, as you know. And testosterone, if given in too high quantities, can result in polycythemia, or a significant increase in the hemoglobin. When there's a significant increase in hemoglobin, that changes the viscosity of the blood and predisposes people potentially to heart attacks, strokes, etc. So the appropriate level of testosterone is really the lowest number that relieves symptoms and improves the quality of life of that patient. Generally speaking, we try to get the testosterone into the mid-range of normal. Normal is between 300 and 1,000. And we try to get it around 500 or so, which is usually good enough to relieve the symptoms. But we're really trying to get the minimal amount that relieves those symptoms. So that's important to take into consideration.
And if men say, oh, well, I had my testosterone level checked 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I'm now 45 years old, should they have that checked every year? And if their testosterone levels are right at the low normal, does that mean it's good enough and they don't need any replacement, or should they go and seek further kind of information?
I think they should absolutely seek further information. However, if there are no symptoms that can be reasonably related to a low testosterone, then I don't think that there's a reason to pursue screening testosterone, for example. I don't think that there's any evidence in the non-symptomatic population that the supplementation of testosterone is important. And yes, there are men who are in their 40s and even older who are still interested in fertility. One has to be aware that supplemental testosterone arrests sperm production. Just because there's no feedback mechanism anymore, and the exogenous testosterone does not allow for a normal circadian rhythm of testosterone, which is essential for spermatogenesis.
Well, that is good to know. Now, we know that men typically aren't the first ones to raise their hands to go see a physician. And women, we have our visit with our OBGYN, our mammograms yearly. We routinely go in. So what are some of the ways that loved ones can encourage men to go to see the doctor and have this kind of workup to see if they are entering into andropause?
So I think that's a really important question, and it often is left upon the shoulders of the women in the men's lives, as many things are. And I think a supportive sort of joint approach is perhaps one of the best approaches to take. And by that I mean, if the woman in the relationship is going for her gynecological examinations, it's fine to say, hey, hon, hey, babe, whatever, come and let's get this done. Let's get this done together. There's a urologist that works in the same office building as my gynecologist, and I'm sure that they would be happy to see you. But let's make sure that we're healthy for each other as we get on in age. And that's probably the most supportive and best way to go about this.
Thank you so much, Dr. Leslie Dean. If there are any audience viewers who want to get in touch with you, is there any social media handle that they can find you to ask further questions about andropause?
For sure. On X, at LESDEANE, or you can find me on Howard University's website.
Well, I know they will be finding you because, like I said, there's not a lot of information out there for them to see. So thank you so much, and we will have you back.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Take care.
Now, coming up next, what if you mention a bird to your boo? And if they don't respond, is your relationship in trouble, right? We'll break down a new relationship trend that's gone viral.
Welcome to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network and hosted by myself, Rhea Baker, and my good sis, Jamira Burley. We are just two millennial women tackling everything at the intersection of politics, gender, and pop culture.
And we don't just settle for commentary. This is about solution-driven dialogue to get us to the world as it could be and not just as it is.
Watch us on the Black Star Network, so tune in to The Other Side of Change.
So there's this viral relationship theory going around on the internet. So of course, we had to bring in our mental health expert to see if there's any validity to it. It's called the bird theory. Now, I know you saw it on TikTok, right? It's a trend where one partner mentions a mundane observation, like seeing a bird, to test if the other person engages or ignores it. Mental health therapist and coach Robin May is here to break it down for us and keep us in relationship. Robin, welcome.
I am so excited to be here, Dr. Ebony. Thank you for having me.
Right. You know, I am so excited about this because I am going to test this out. I'm that kind of person. So can you explain to us what exactly is the bird theory in more detail?
So first of all, I want you all to stay married. My whole focus is to help people stay married. My whole business is IBelieveInMarriage.com. And so while I understand all of us wanting to test our spouse, I want us to be a little bit careful. And I'll explain why. So the bird theory is based off of the Gottmans. Now, whatever industry that you are in, I want you to think about whomever is that person in that industry. That are the Gottmans. For those of us who do marriage work, they are the heroes of the industry. And so anything that they put out, we all grab hold to. So the reality is the bird theory is basically connected to a bid, B-I-D, a bid for connection. And let me tell you what's so interesting. Before I even knew that I was going to have this conversation, I literally just released a video on the 6 research-based reasons people are disconnected in their marriage. And one of the reasons is what's called decreased emotional responsiveness. So that's basically you are reaching out, trying to have a connection with your significant other, with your spouse, and it's not being reciprocated. So what the Gottmans have said with the bird theory is that you say something random to your spouse, something that's not a big deal. It's nothing super serious. It's just a regular statement. And if your spouse responds to you, I think they would say turns toward you, engages with you, that means the two of you are connected. The research I believe they found said that 86% of couples who respond to bids for connection have healthy marriages. And I think there's about a 30% expectation that if they do not respond, those couples end up separating. So I understand why y'all want to do the bid for connection.
And they end up, it's one of these things too. Is it related to the love? Like, what if your love language is in words of affirmation and you're not a talky kind of person? Maybe I'm speaking for myself. But does that mean that you automatically have more misses for bid connection that may be taken in the wrong way?
That is such a great question. So this is not necessarily connected to love languages necessarily. So let's come back and have another conversation about love languages because love languages are very important, but there's also an idea of what makes me feel emotionally connected to you. So that's really a different conversation. A bid for connection, a BID, a bid for connection, it doesn't even have to be words necessarily. That is the reason why I am saying, y'all, don't test your spouse and take the test as the indicator of the health of your marriage. Let me say it again. I understand, being on TikTok and you're seeing all the things. Listen, if I could get all my couples off of TikTok, would get them all off of TikTok because we see all of these different messages and we don't have them in context and we use them to judge our relationship. So here's the deal. A bid for connection is simply, I am reaching out to you for some way to connect and you respond. You don't have to be the type of person who wants to have really deep conversations. It is basically, I am reaching out and you are turning toward me. That's basically the bid for connection.
Okay, and So what does it mean if if a partner, see, this is my problem. That's my problem. So what does it mean, the separation of work and home? But what does it mean when a partner consistently misses the bid for connection? Does that mean that they're not really into you? Or is it a learned thing that they have to go through?
Okay, so if I am observing this and someone comes to me and they say that my partner is consistently not responding to my bid for, remember that key word is consistently. So the reason why I'm teasing all of you who are saying I'm going to test my spouse, a one-time miss cannot be the indicator, right? Because life is lifing. And so a one-time miss, but in all seriousness, when there is a pattern, when there is a consistency of I am reaching out and you're not responding, I have found there could be one of two things. One, it could really be that your spouse is depleted, right? Again, I said life is lifing. We're carrying so much. I do a seminar called Avoiding the Roommate Zone, Avoiding the Roommate Zone. Why? Because I have not met a couple in these 20 plus years that I have been in the trenches helping couples navigate their marriage. In a few weeks, I will be celebrating 24 years of marriage. I have not met a couple. Thank you. You know, I said, give us our props. I have not met a couple who has not been in the roommate zone, coming out the roommate zone, or going into the roommate zone. And so I say that to say there are different factors that contribute to what I'm calling the roommate zone, or that contributes to a spouse not responding to a bid for connection, or the bird theory. So it could be that your spouse is depleted, life is lifing, and they're having a hard time managing. And so over the last few weeks, the last few months, they haven't been responding. I asked a client recently who was kind of communicating something along these lines. I asked her, wait, I know a lot that's going on in y'all's life. I know a lot that you all are dealing with. So, but I have met her in the midst of lifing for them. So my question to her was, before life was lifing to this degree, was this going on? So in other words, is this a pattern of your marriage, or is this just the pressure of this season? And so what I would ask a woman or a husband, a wife or a husband, is this a pattern? And if it is, are there some other factors that are happening? Is it that he or she is depleted, or are they really disconnected?
Well, I could tell you preaching your sessions, and I need that kind of preaching, because is there a difference too in the small moments of responsiveness? You know, do those matter more than the big grand gestures of, well, I helped lift the world for you, or you didn't have to worry about taking care of your car when it was totaled. I did that for you. Or is it the small everyday things that we need to concentrate on?
Okay, so I'm about to make a big statement.
Okay.
I need everybody to hold on, because I think that this might be wisdom that is not what is heard often. I tell couples all the time that there is no such thing as standing still in marriage. When couples tell me we're just stagnant, I tell them I understand why you're saying that. But really, there's no such thing as standing still. And I want all the marriage therapists to DM me and say, Robin, I totally agree. Let me tell you what I mean by that. Marriage is dynamic. It's constantly moving. And here's really what that means. There's always an interpretation happening in your marriage, right? Now, let me throw this out here, because I'm going to explain what I mean about moving. There's no such thing as standing still. What we have to understand is that you, me, my best friend is Oprah. She just don't know that she's my best friend. So I'm going to say Oprah, whomever your person is, we are all either trying to repeat what we saw growing up, or we're trying to reject what we saw growing up. And the scary thing about it is we're doing both at the same time in different dynamics of our life. So when you ask, are just the small moments or the large moments, or why are the small moments so important? Remember, we're not standing still. We're either moving toward each other, or we're pulling away from each other. I want you to imagine a cruise ship. When a cruise ship is turning, the cruise ship turns very slightly, but it's still a turn. Even if you can't feel the turn turning, it is happening. Another way I suggest people to understand it is we're either making a deposit or we're making a withdrawal. Ooh. And every single day, you are either making a deposit or you're making a withdrawal. So the goal is to make as many deposits as possible, so that when you do a withdrawal, you don't go into overdraft. So it is much easier to make consistent small deposits because, again, life is lifing. So if you can make small deposits over time, that one moment that you don't respond to a bid for connection, it doesn't take your marriage into overdraft. There's enough margin, there's enough cushion that it doesn't take y'all out.
You know what? You are preaching a word, and some people are bankrupt in their relationships. And the question is, what if you're one of those persons that realize that you feel like all too often you're the one being ignored? Like, what's a healthy way to say, hey, you've overdrafted me without starting a fight, right? They want to get to tomorrow. How do they approach that situation?
Okay, so I'm really passionate about helping us take personal responsibility for ourselves because you can't change anyone. So I would massage that just a little bit because all I can do is do my best to present what is on my heart in a way that respects you, that honors you, and that is true to what I am really feeling. What I cannot do is control what your response is to that. And so many times people hesitate to communicate or say what they need or what they want because of fear, the concern of what their partner, how their partner is going to receive it. It's a very natural response, but as a therapist, it's important that I help us own what we can own and let go of what's not ours. So I can't guarantee you, because I don't know your partner and I don't know the dynamics of your marriage, whether or not your spouse is going to be upset or angry, or it's okay for them to feel kind of way, like the young people say, but you still communicate what you need. So how do you do that? Well, not only am I a therapist, I'm a minister, and so as you might be able to tell, so I like things to make sense. And so what I tell my couples is CCC. We need to have things that can help us remember. So what is CCC? The first C is I want you to carve out the time, carve out the space to have the conversation. Hear me. What I'm about to share with you is not just for you reaching out and you're not getting anything back. This strategy, communicating in this way, can help with any of the tough conversations. So number one, carve out the space. And what I really mean by that is I want couples to have what I call a growth mindset when it comes to marriage. Now, I said what I call a growth mindset as if I came up with growth mindset, which I did not. They apply the concept of growth mindset to marriage. Carve out the space to have the conversation. What does growth mindset have to do with that? Well, many couples, what I hear from husbands, I'm going to give the husbands a little something. What I hear from husbands all the time is my wife is always moving the yardstick. Oh. She told me to work on this. I worked on this. And now she's telling me we need to work on that. And I can understand that frustration because the wife is saying, yes, there's a lot we need to work on. And so even if in your marriage, it's the opposite, you're the one saying that, he's the one saying that, carve out a space in your marriage where you all can have tough conversations and you all sit down periodically to say, this is what we're working on. This is where we're growing. This is what I need. This is what you need. So remember, C, carve out. And then the next C is lean in with curiosity. If I could give couples the number one tool in their tool belt with marriage is curiosity. Don't assume. Don't make blanket statements. Don't assign meaning. Lean in with curiosity. If you've been married as long as I have, you have a lot of things that you have experienced in your marriage. And sometimes you and your spouse got to go in there and clean out the filter. In a dryer, if you don't clean out that filter, it doesn't work as well. It's the same thing in our marriage. I've known my husband since he was 17 years old. We have to, I just told our age, didn't I? Yeah. You got to carve out, you got to get in there and clean out that filter. So lean in with curiosity. You want to approach your spouse about a difficult conversation, approach them with curiosity, not with accusation. You never lean in with curiosity. Then the last C, remember we said carve out space, lean in with curiosity. The last C is create a strategy, create a plan to deal with whatever you're talking about. Because you just have the conversation and the two of you don't have a takeaway. And here is how you can have the takeaway. Use the start, stop, continue method. Start, stop, continue. This is what I would like for us to start doing. This is what I would like for us to stop doing. This is what I would like for us to continue doing. So whatever the big conversation is, what is the plan? Create a plan. What are we going to start doing? What are we going to stop doing? What is it that we're going to continue doing? Carve out space, lean in with curiosity, create a plan.
You know what, Ms. Robin? I'm gonna send me an invoice. Send me an invoice because I am not going to pivot. I'm not going to ask my husband about the bird. I'm going to talk about the 3 C's and address how I can show up better in our relationship. So I thank you so much for your words. We will definitely have to have you back on the show because I want to talk about those 5 love languages. Yeah. Is there anywhere our viewers can find you? What's your handle? So they can get it.
Yes, Instagram for I Believe in Marriage is just simply I Believe _in Marriage. I Believe _in Marriage. And what's super exciting, we have a free resource right now where couples can do what we call a marriage reset. It's just 3 days of short audio messages to help couples reset. I keep telling couples, do it before Valentine's Day. So it's I Believe _in Marriage.
I Believe in Marriage. There you have it. Thank you, Robert, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Well, we'll be right back for my prescription of the week.
I'm Brittany Noble, Midwest-born, HBCU educated with experience in newsrooms across the country. Well, I've teamed up with Roland Martin to bring to you The Breakdown. This isn't just news. It's our stories, our voice, our community. Join me for The Breakdown, Monday through Friday at midday, only on the Black Star Network.
Vitamins aren't hype, they're support. You know, we live in a world where wellness trends move fast. One day is green powder, the next day is gummy that promises everything. So it's easy to roll your eyes at vitamins. But here's the truth. Vitamins aren't magic, they're maintenance. Your body is doing thousands of jobs every second, keeping your heart beating, your brain sharp, your immune system ready, your energy steady. Vitamins don't replace food or sleep, but they help your body do what it's already trying to do. Vitamin D, for instance, supports moods, bones, and immunity, especially important when we don't get enough sunlight. B vitamins help turn food into energy and support brain function. Magnesium, well, that helps with stress, sleep, and muscle recovery. Iron keeps oxygen moving through your blood so you don't feel drained. Think of vitamins like a backup crew. They don't run the show. They keep things from falling apart when life gets busy, meals get skipped, and stress gets heavy. And this isn't about being perfect. It's about being intentional. Taking a vitamin can be a daily reminder that your health matters, that you're investing in yourself in a small but consistent way. It's saying, I care about future me. Wellness isn't built in grand gestures. It's built in tiny habits. A glass of water, a short walk, a vitamin in the morning, little choices, long life. Because taking care of your body isn't extra, it's essential. And that, my friends, is my prescription of the week. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next week on Second Opinion.